RD-180 ignition, and we have liftoff of the United Launch Alliance Atlas V rocket carrying EchoStar 19.
Okay, my name is Richard Kusiolek. I'm managing editor for GMCstream Digital Publishing. Hughes Network Systems is a global leader in broadband satellite technology and services for home and office, but it is also known in the defense and government sectors. So today I'm very proud to introduce Rick Lober, who is Vice President and General Manager of Hughes Defense and Intelligence Systems. So welcome to GMCstream.
Great.
Nice to see you, Rick. You bet. And you know, Rick, for those who really don't know you already, I'm sure you're very well known in the industry today. Can you give us a kind of a brief insight into experience and accomplishments at Hughes?
Well, I've been at Hughes for about 10 years, and before that I was with a company called Cubic running their communications group, and before that I was involved in signal intelligence. So I have an engineering background, and program management, and then general and P&L management. At Hughes, primarily we've been growing the defense segment, and Hughes had always done work in defense, but when the company was split up, Hughes Network Systems was primarily commercially oriented, and we decided to make a push into the defense markets, and that's been going very well. We've been able to have our satellite modems placed with General Atomics on the Predator UAV. We just won a large program under Boeing for the next generation military satellite ground system, where we're going to be doing the network management piece and what we call dynamic resource allocation. And we have quite a few other initiatives going on right now in the defense space.
Wow, that's pretty impressive. That's an impressive menu of accomplishments, both that you have done and also Hughes. You know, I've heard so much about the Jupiter system, so I have to talk about that. And it's the world's most widely deployed high throughput satellite, or HTS, as you know, platform. What more can you tell us about this particular HTS platform?
So Jupiter, we use the name for two areas. Actually, the satellite itself, which is a high throughput satellite that we actually is being made by us by Maxar Technologies. They also did Jupiter 1 and Jupiter 2. Jupiter 3 is on the drawing board. Jupiter is also the ground infrastructure and the terminal infrastructure. So we sell that to international operators around the world for their systems use. So it's kind of a loop. We learn a lot from managing our own system, and we put that back into a new technology to develop the next generation systems.
Well, that's really impressive. You know, and you know, we know a little bit about. I mean, you just mentioned about Jupiter 3 and that's total, you know, capacity. Will this really increase also the increase? I'm talking about Jupiter 3 for our defense sector.
If we have CONUS operators in the U.S., most of our satellites cover the U.S. and the Americas. We just did announce a joint venture with Yahsat for the Middle East and Africa, so we're going to be selling service. In fact, we are selling service to the DoD presently on those satellites. We'll also be covering Brazil and South America, so if there's military operations, say in Central America, we'll be able to provide capacity there.
Well, thank you very much. You know, Rick, can you briefly discuss the developments in satellite communications that are addressing kind of my area of interest, which is special operations mobility and needs through smaller, lightweight terminals that can be carried on a soldier's, you know, backpack and only require one soldier to install the terminal quickly for nearly instant, reliable communications in challenging warfighter environments?
Yeah, there's been, particularly the last 5 years, some real advances. I mean, we're seeing the size of the radio, or the modem as we call it, come down to probably a credit card size card, or index card size. The antenna technology has moved fairly quickly. We're seeing lighter antennas, lower cost antennas. And then everybody is waiting now for the advent of what we call ESAs, or electronically steered arrays. You see a lot of those out at the satellite show here today. Those are going to really bring the size down. So.
Well, of course, that's going to really help the warfighter. I think that technology is so, crucial.
It is, and it's also it ties into the satellites themselves. What we call these high throughput satellites or spot beam satellites focus is very much like the cellular network, where you're dividing it into cells or small beams, and the newer satellites focus a lot of power into a small area, so you can get higher data rates and use lighter weight, smaller equipment.
Okay. Well, thank you again. How, I was going to ask you a question, how these satellite communication systems are interoperative, if you will, with military communication systems. I think you addressed a little bit already in place to ensure that our warfighters do not need to wait for a particular bandwidth to become available.
Well, that's one of the areas that Hughes has put a lot of effort into, and we are under contract with the Air Force to do a pilot program on a concept called flexible modem interface. And the idea there is you will operate different terminal types over different networks so that you can get the bandwidth when you need it, and automatically switch to those networks, either depending on need or maybe one network is being jammed. So it's a concept that seems to be getting a lot of interest from the DoD.
Well, thank you again. Getting back to Hughes Network Systems, the defense and intelligence systems that you are general manager of demonstrated a 360-degree beyond line of sight SATCOM capability. Can you give us an update on this in a 2019 perspective? Is there a change in that capability?
Okay, I think you're referring to what we're doing with the rotary wing aircraft. Right. So we've actually developed a satellite waveform that will shoot through the blades of the helicopter. As you know, the blades tend to block the signal, particularly at higher frequencies. So we've developed an algorithm that puts all those pieces together, and we can get full motion video through helicopter blades in order to get the warfighter real-time video to the ground.
Wow, that's really impressive. Another question, the U.S. military and NATO countries, as you know, are kind of moving towards a kind of one integrated IP-centric, CSISR platforms for, the Air Force, the Navy and Marines, and to some degree, the United States Army. Further programs to use swarm UAVs constellations could be a battle strategy. I say could be, but what is your insight into these defense trends that may demonstrate less dependency on small satellites and larger constellations being used in the commercial market space today?
Well, we're certainly seeing a move to LEO satellites, where you're going to have hundreds and maybe thousands of satellites. Because they're low Earth orbiting, you tend to get higher signal power, you get resiliency in that if a satellite is not operating or is taken out, you can switch to another satellite. I think that's going to really enable things like IoT, Internet of Things, where you're doing sensing, or you're getting very, very small terminals on small UAVs. So that's the trend in the commercial world, and the military has a lot of interest in the LEO constellations right now.
So so you think the swarm concept is a good strategy? I'm going to throw that in. I hope that doesn't put you in the spot.
It's a strategy, because these are so small. It makes it a little bit tough for satellites. So getting a terminal on there. So I think those would probably be communicating down to the ground over a line of sight radio. But certainly UAVs, artificial intelligence are the future for the DoD.
Absolutely. Of course, this is my opinion, from my opinion piece of it. Defense government demands for satellite service will outpace commercial the satellite sector. As a result, will Hughes Defense and Intelligence Systems update its service delivery models?
Well, what we're hoping to see is the military adopt these commercial models, particularly what we call a managed service. So instead of the military going out and buying their own bandwidth and setting up their own network, they just tell a commercial operator, this is the amount of throughput, this is where we need it, this is the service level, and leverage the cost effectiveness of a commercial network. So that's what we're offering to the military today. The military is still probably only 10% of the overall satellite usage. They use quite a bit of commercial bandwidth during the Gulf War, and I think that really helped because the military satellites were not up there yet, at least the current generation. But we hope in the future they'll be using a lot more commercial to offer resiliency and improved capacity.
Well, you know, it's this is maybe our second interview, and I'm always amazed with your scope of knowledge and your understanding of not only defense and intelligence, but also satellite industry. So, do you have any final comments? This is kind of the end of our brief interview, or brief time together.
Well, it's an exciting time in the satellite industry right now. There's a lot going on, not only satellite, but space in general. And I hope that's a real motivator for young people to get into the engineering and math disciplines. It was a motivator for me watching the Apollo program, and it's just good to see Space 2.0 taking off.
Yeah, excellent. Well, you know, I know that STEM is really important. This has been a big band beat, if you will, you know, in the United States Air Force, and I'm sure the other, you know, service entities as well. So, have you seen a trend in Hughes as well, as far as the recruiting, talking about STEM?
We're seeing a lot younger people interested in space. Hughes has a major initiative with 4-H and clubs around the country because we serve so many rural customers on STEM type training. So we do a lot of programs there. Excellent.
Well, I'm going to thank you very much again for your time. I know you're very busy, and it's really always a pleasure in meeting you and having some time to talk about some of these issues. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
You bet, thank you.